Hello and welcome to Lovely English Stories. Thank you for stopping by. This story is written for advanced English learners. Ready? Let's get started. C1, C2 English Story. The Cliff Edge. It was a full moon, but the road ahead, shrouded in fog, was difficult to manoeuvre in the murky gloom. Ruby inched forward in the ill-lit lane, tense and uneasy. She had never driven this route before, always keeping to the main roads. 6 months ago, Ruby's mother had tragically died, leaving her bereft and heartbroken. Ruby had been advised by her doctor that she needed rest and peace to help her to recover from the trauma. She had booked to stay in a small country cottage only 20 miles from home. She was looking forward to a tranquil, solitary few days. En route to the cottage, Ruby concentrated on driving in the horrendous conditions. She began to reminisce about the times she had shared with her mother. Ruby's father had died, aged 35, due to an accident at work. His death was instantaneous after falling from the roof of a block of flats. Ruby had only a vague recollection of her father, as she was only a toddler when he died. Ruby's mother had taken on the role of both parents. She had never remarried, giving all her love and support to her only child. Ruby had an unconventional but stable upbringing. Her recollection was of her mother taking her to the local park. They would visit the museum where many activities took place. Ruby loved the old kitchen with its Victorian range, large cupboards, and wooden tables which were used as work surfaces. The floor was constructed of large stone slabs. Ruby remembered these as being very cold to stand on. If the weather was warm, Ruby would play in the park's paddling pool, with its fountains and water jets. It was such fun. She would shriek with joy. Her mother would watch, enjoying the scene and glorying in her daughter's happiness. Ruby also attended swimming lessons. Being confident and fearless in the water, she was soon accomplished enough to join the local swimming proficiency program. Her mother was so proud. She wouldn't swim herself, as being raised in an underprivileged household, swimming lessons had never been an option due to her family's restricted income. Ruby's formative years, however, were carefree and full of fun. Her mother worked hard to enable them both to enjoy life after her own impoverished upbringing. Ruby cast her mind back to the summers spent with her mother. They enjoyed holidays at Scarborough on the Yorkshire coast. There was so much to see and do there. Ruby never tired of visiting the picturesque town. Alongside her mother, they would promenade next to the beach, taking in the sea air before ascending the many steps up to the castle. Once they had navigated their way, it was a wonderful view of the coastline and the pretty fishermen's cottages near to the harbour. Descending another path from the castle led the way to the North Bay and its open-air theatre. Many famous artists of different genres performed there. Nearby was Ruby's favourite location, Pease Home Park. The grounds were in a beautiful, peaceful setting, boasting inspirational gardens, surrounded by a tranquil lake. Her reminiscing was broken by the resounding beep of a car horn. Ruby had been so deep in thought that she had not seen the vehicle approaching through the obscure shadows of the dank fog. Now alert, she drove slowly forward, aware now of the worsening visibility. Gradually, Ruby steered her car forward, focusing through the smog. Many years of visiting Scarborough passed all too quickly. Ruby and her mother grew closer, becoming more like friends. They supported each other, helping to keep any problems in perspective. They loved to ramble as they talked over any concerns. It was on such an occasion that Ruby's world came crashing down around her. Recollections of the event came flashing back to her. One afternoon, Ruby and her mother had decided to hike from Scarborough to the moors. The open panorama gave a feeling of space in the uncultivated terrain. With its limitless horizon, it was a place to wander and clear her mind. It was breathtaking. After a time, they headed towards the coastal path which skirted the towering cliffs. Here, the roughly trodden trail was difficult and stony. Underneath loomed the sheer rock face. As they walked, the sun sank, and suddenly the wind grew stronger. A storm was brewing. Both had to continue, as further along the track was a lane leading inland. The sky was now a whirling body of clouds, as lightning flashed, illuminating the swollen sea which pounded the rocks below. Ruby's mum trudged on in front of her. As the wind rushed across the fields, heavy rain fell horizontally upon them. Soon, water seeped into their boots, where mud clumps stuck, making walking difficult. They were drenched, their skin chafed by their wet clothing. The vast and furious ocean roared beneath them. The path, now perilously close to a sheer drop. Their low visibility in the storm obscured their way. Ruby could hear stones breaking free, plummeting into the forbidding, angry sea. Trembling with cold and anxiety, Ruby called to her mother. She turned. Without warning, she slipped on the wet, beaten track. As she fell, the cliff edge crumbled, taking Ruby's mother over the knife-like rocks into the hungry sea below. The waves crashed and pounded the cliff foot, and Ruby knew then that her mother was lost forever. She screamed. Ruby jolted back to the present. The grey fog blurred her vision. She drove forward steadily, aware now that the sodden haze which had hung heavily was gradually clearing. Pockets of clarity appeared, reflecting her inner calm. Throughout the last sorrowful months, Ruby had become reconciled to her mother's devastating death, and the realization that the tragedy had been a disastrous twist of fate. Ruby sighed. She mourned her mother, but would be strong and thrive, pursuing life to the full as she was nurtured to do. As Ruby drove on, the dull, dreary sky slowly cleared, leaving no trace of the dank fog. On the horizon before her, bathed in light mist and illuminated by the sun, stood the cottage where she would stay for the next few days. Ruby smiled. She would survive. Sometimes, when you lose your way on an arduous journey, you arrive in a beautiful place. We hope you enjoyed this lovely English story. Thank you for stopping by. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you soon.